And we've got everybody here, so we'll call to order and do a pledge of allegiance. Sorry about that, we're a little closer than we usually are. Full house. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I see that we're almost all here. We are missing Mr. Spillane, but other than that, everybody else is in attendance. So we will open the public hearing at 6:30. We do have some members of the public, so if anybody wants to speak. If not, that's fine too.
Got one more coming.
We got one more coming. We'll give it a few minutes. If nobody wants to speak at the public hearing, then we'll close the public hearing and open our business meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Andrew?
I think that I heard you say that in order for us to avoid having another public hearing, if I have some change that I want to make that adds a line item, I have to at least discuss it in the public forum as opposed to when we reconvene as a...
Yeah, we can't make motions right now, but we can
Right.
discuss.
Okay. The thing I'm going to propose when we get to our actual meeting is to simply change and add a line that is not yet in the budget, and that requires it to be disclosed at this time. You can't add a line after the budget has been discussed. And the line I would like to add is a line in the fire and rescue budget, which is a new budget this year. And I would simply like to move, I'm not adding any dollars to the budget, I simply would like to move the new retirement dollars that belong with fire to the fire line. The police already, in their separate budget, have a line for retirement. And because police and fire retirement are so significantly more, police is 29 point something percent, fire department employees, it's 32%, I believe, or 31 point something. And therefore, I think, particularly in this year when this is the big issue in the budget, I think, adding the fire department, that I think the retirement dollars having to do with those new employees should also be in the fire and rescue budget. So I am going to move that at the
Okay.
discussion.
Andy?
In the interest of full disclosure for those gathered here, I would just make a note that either myself or the chairman are going to offer an amendment to the bottom line that was voted on previously. And what I'm going to propose is $4,269,211.07, which is a rather minor adjustment. It was just some
We had to...
cleaning up the math that we did sort of last minute.
Yes, I was going to speak on that. Zach added up, and we voted on a number that was slightly off.
Well, Zach added it up, and John and I approved it.
Yeah.
And said, yes, it looks great.
We thought we were there. We were slightly off, so we do have to modify that. But if you just want to read that bottom line number one more time, Eddie.
Sure, and I'll be making a motion with this number, and that's $4,269,211.07.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
And I'd just like to point out that actually also includes an extra $500 in cemetery. You know, as I mentioned last time, it was supposed to be $30,901, and we had somehow included only $30,401, and we went back to the video and confirmed that we had added another $500 to supplies, so that's part of the adjustment as well.
So we do have some more people in here if anybody wants to speak. No? Just going for a copy of the budget. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin?
parliamentary inquiry.
Yep.
We don't have to disclose motions that we intend to make at the business meeting during this public hearing, or do we?
I would say no.
Thank you.
No, this was just, Andy wanted to update the line, and Andrea.
Oh, I understand her business is a little bit different
Yes.
than,
No, I don't expect
Right.
there's no sense in making it all now.
thank you.
All right, I guess I'll make a last call for public hearing. If anybody has anything to speak about. Andrea?
I'm going to read this from the RSA that I have here, 13 XIA, and it says, "The default budget shall be disclosed at the first budget hearing held pursuant to RSA 32.5. I believe this is the first budget hearing. And the governing body, unless the provisions of 40.14-B are adopted." Well, that's the one where the Municipal Budget Committee is directed to do the default budget, which we are not. So it says, "The governing body shall complete a default budget form created by the Department of Revenue Administration to demonstrate how the default budget amount was calculated. The form and an associated calculation shall at a minimum show these items: appropriations, reductions, one-time expenditures." And it goes on to say, "The amount should not be amended by the legislative body, and also the amount can't be amended by us, but it could be adjusted by the governing body." So if somebody wanted to say something about the default budget, they should have some point where they can look at it.
I'm going to refer that to the town administrator or the selectman's rep.
Yeah, I will start by saying that I am certainly going to propose a default budget number this evening, and I believe does everyone have a copy of this? And we also have a copy of the default budget, and certainly, I think the avenue to take, if you want to lobby for changes to the default budget, would be to come to a selectmen's meeting
Or a school board meeting.
or a school board
Okay.
meeting and request that.
Mr. Chairman,
Zach?
I'll just note that the school has changed its default budget. It's been reduced by, I don't know the
Hey, Zach.
exact number. Oh, sorry. There has been some changes to the default budget from the school. The number's been decreased. I haven't done the math out for the exact number, but it was, Amber, approximately,
The change approximately?
yeah, the reduction.
60,000 and change?
So approximately $60,000 with some corrections there, and you have all that information in your packet.
Okay. Back to the public hearing. We've made I just ask if you do make a comment, just jump on the mic so we can get your comment on the record.
This is a question about what's in the budget, the same budget.
Yeah, just hop on over if you don't mind, and that way we can get it on the record. Thank you for jumping up and saying something.
On the first,
You're the first.
good evening. Eric Berglund's my name, live on Nottingham Road. And my question has to do with Northern Pass. I'm not making any predictions here, but it's never over until it's over, of course. So we don't know what the outcome is going to be in terms of whether that line will be constructed through Deerfield. And I'm wondering if the select board has made any, include any contingency monies in the budget in the event that this project does go through. I think we need to be sure we have the resources to manage our side of it so we don't get, we can't just let them run wild.
Yeah, I would comment. We have specifically tailored the amount of money we have in the legal budget to advice that we've received from our council regarding what's going to be needed for Northern Pass. And in fact, this week, we've received a finalized schedule of billable hours through March that we have. What we feel is fairly solid word is an accurate estimate, and we've encompassed that in the budget.
Well, this is legal expense for managing Deerfield's interest in the process of getting to a decision, right?
That's part of the specific estimate, yes.
But I'm thinking of something, if you remember when we built the school, DCS, we had, and even this one, we had a clerk of the works. Now, it wouldn't be the same kind of thing, but it's somebody that's going to be overseeing, and maybe it's more than one. I mean, this is going to be huge if it ever happens. Let's hope it doesn't. So that's what I'm getting to.
We have not, we have not put any particular money in there for either new positions to affect that role or for consultants to affect that role.
So we're going to leave it to chance.
Well, we took a look at what we thought we were gonna need for legal expense going into this year, double-checked it with the folks that we're paying to advise us, and went with those numbers. But we have not contemplated either creating a position or contracting with consultants to specifically oversee the project as it unfolds, no.
So was that a subject that was covered in the conversation with the attorney representing the town?
Certainly not with the board as a whole, and I don't believe either the town administrator or the chairman have discussed that angle, no.
Well, I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Kevin?
Thanks for coming in, Mr. Berglund. It's always a pleasure to see you. I would just advise you that, obviously there is the deliberative session coming up, and citizens can propose alterations to the budget at that time. So if you want to give it some more thought, perhaps that would be an opportunity.
That's probably the last opportunity, right?
For this budget year, yes, that will be it.
Okay, thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Any further public comment during the hearing portion? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you very much for coming down. And we'll open our business meeting.
Mr. Chairman, do we have an agenda?
We do. Did you print any of those, John? I'll pass. Oh, yes, we do have. Thanks, John. I had a special one. Thank you. Not the most complicated agenda we've ever had here. I might have counted right. I might have counted. Thank you. Thank you. What's that? No, I just put that on there because it's already on there. Minutes? If we can do minutes if.
Gonna make it all the way down?
If you have issues.
We got enough, we're covered.
That's the last minute that came out. I haven't read that one yet, right?
Okay.
That's the January 9th minutes? Okay. I'll see if anybody else, has everybody else read the January 9th minutes? The ones
I
that
have
signed
not.
the
Yes.
other day? I get a yes and a no, when everybody feel comfortable voting on those, or we want to hold off?
I haven't
voting?
I don't know about voting,
Okay.
I'd be happy to just.
If you want to
comments.
just bring your comment,
Okay. We have copies of, well,
we've been
we
emailed
had
copies.
emailed copies, so not everybody has had a chance to look at them. I had a couple of questions, though, that had to do with, first of all the votes seemed to only total to 7, and there were 8 people here last time. And so I did.
I haven't read these yet. but we'll-
Okay, but every vote totals to 7, and I know ones that, I thought were 6-2, 6-2, end up showing as 5-2, so it, seems that it maybe should be corrected. There's a comment here that Zach made about the people that take their pre-tax health benefits, and I thought you said something like 99.9% of the people take it pre-tax. In other words, everybody almost does it because that
Right.
would be the right thing to do. The minutes say 47%, which I think is a,
99.9 was, I believe, from my script.
right, so 47 didn't look right. Where else? Oh, there's some typos and some spelling errors, which, again, if you're going to approve minutes, you might as well do it. There's another one where, let's see what this one is. Warrant article number 7, Article 7, we voted on, and I have a note that says we did it unanimously, which it says here. However, the wording of the warrant article in the minutes says no amount to be raised from taxation, and that wording was not in the warrant article that we voted on, because I had stated at the beginning of the meeting I would vote against anything that was no amount from taxation. So I don't know how the wording of the warrant article ended up different from the vote, what we voted on. But again, I'd just like to make the point that these are minutes you can read because they're only 9 pages.
Yes. I
But-
have asked them to be pared
Right,
down a little bit
which
from,
I think, this is very helpful,
But we
but
need-
I am still distressed by the fact that last meeting, we approved minutes from November 20-something or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, through the meeting prior to this, and we did it in bulk, and I know you kind of said, did everybody read these? Well, I voted against it because quite honestly, I didn't read the 48 pages and the 43 pages, and I'm a little disturbed that people would all unanimously vote that those were okay when, I find minutes like this, and so I'm, again, I'm just bringing that up about these minutes. I know we can't vote on it yet because other people haven't seen it, but I want them to, as they're reading, pay attention.
Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was not present at the January 9th meeting. I was out of town on important business, but I did watch the meeting video, and I have to admit, I'm not 100% sure that the approval of outstanding minutes motion was in order. It certainly lacked any specificity.
I know what you mean.
It's been a long day. As to exactly what minutes were being approved, who they were received by, and what were being approved, I have to admit I was very surprised that that motion, one, was made in that manner, and two, passed on a 7-1 vote. I would suggest, at the very least, we should at least have a list of the meeting minutes, a specific list of the ones we're voting on, just so the record is very clear. That was the thing that jumped out at me on these meeting minutes.
Okay. Further discussion on minutes? I'm going to make a motion for the town budget to change the NBC bottom line.
Mr. Chairman, point of order?
Yes?
The agenda is a little rough. Is it the intention that during this meeting that we're going to move the bottom lines and then take ballot recommendation votes tonight on the budget and all warrant articles? Is that
We
the?
did that at the last meeting. I'm making a motion to correct the bottom line from our vote on the last meeting, and then I was going to reopen discussion on the town and school budget. We voted the bottom lines last meeting, and like Andy said, we did make a calculating error on the town budget, so that was my motion that I had started, was to correct that number.
So, I
We
guess,
made the ballot recommendations on the warrant articles at the previous meeting.
so now that we have 10 instead of 8 members, would it be worth reconfirming those votes to get a more accurate head count on this committee?
I don't see, we've never done that before. We voted on it. The members in attendance voted on the articles. If you want to make that motion after I'm done with this motion, we'll see if it passes. I'll put that to the board, but the warrant articles were voted on it by the Budget Committee at the last meeting. So to finish my motion, I'm going to make a motion for $4,269,211.07. And that's, to clarify that, as Andy mentioned in the public hearing, that's to update the town number to the correct number. There was a calculating error, and as Andrea pointed out, checking the video, there was an error on the cemeteries. All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman?
Kevin?
I'd like to move an amendment to that motion, and I'd like to move that motion be amended to an amount $100,000 larger than what you quoted. Basically, this committee debated and voted increasing the hot top grinding line by $100,000. Well, I suppose I need a
I was
second
about
for
to
the
say, we do
amendment.
need a second before we can,
I'll second it.
okay. Discuss, Kevin.
So we increased it by 100,000. There seemed to be fairly unanimous opinion that we're not keeping up
on our roads. I had sent an email out to the chairman early in the session, not knowing I was not going to be able to be available when highway was discussed, and I asked it to be moved to a meeting when I could be present because I had questions, and that was not done. So I brought it up later, and unfortunately, we didn't have the highway agent, and we still don't, and that certainly is unfortunate. It was removed from the budget, and according to the draft meeting minutes that we have, was that Mr. Robertson had pointed out the selectman budget is a good indication of what the select board will be requesting, meaning, it was 100,000 less than what we were proposing, to which Mr. Langlois made an amendment made a motion to remove the 100,000 from the bottom line, presumably going to highway. In the discussion, the member stated that he was in favor of putting down some new pavement, but with the highway agent not in favor and with no plans on how to use it, it seems we shouldn't include it. And Chairman Dill, you stated that you knew the motion was made in good faith, but there's no reason to inflate the budget if the road agent is telling the board that he can't use it. So I'm going to go back to my previous remarks. That is the exact same testimony that we had a year ago in the Budget Committee. And then the town realizes that they've got impact fees that they're not using, and if they don't use them, they will lapse back to the person that paid the fee, the builder that paid the fee. So all of a sudden, we went from the springtime, don't put the extra 100,000 in because the highway agent won't spend it. We don't have any projects. There's nothing that can be done with the money, even if it's in there, to, oh, look, we've got $100,000. And all of a sudden we have this priority list of very important road repairs to be done, which unfortunately didn't get done this year for various reasons. And the money's been encumbered to next year. And so I will contend one does not have to drive around Deerfield very much to find many other locations of road that are in continuing disrepair. And the longer, as we debated before, and I thought we all agreed, the longer we let these roads go and decay, the more it will cost us in the long run to repair and fix these roads. And so while I understand that perhaps the select board does not support it, we are not the select board, we are the budget committee, and I think it is in the best interest of the citizens of this town that we get caught up on our road maintenance a little bit. If the highway agent chooses not to spend it, then the highway agent chooses not to spend it. But my guess is if the voters approve this budget and approve that money, projects will be found and roads will be improved, and it will be for the betterment of our community.
Thank you. I think at that meeting, it was spoken pretty directly by the selectman rep that the selectmen were planning on making a motion to remove the 100,000 at the deliberative session, which is why we amended the budget.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Further
if I can address that, though, and that is their prerogative. It is also my prerogative to show up at deliberative.
That's fine.
And make a motion to put it in. And if they make a motion to remove it, it does not mean it will pass at deliberative.
That's fine. Any other comments from other budget committee members on this amendment before? Andy?
Yeah, I would just mention briefly that you weren't here, Kevin, but it was with reluctance that the 100,000 was withdrawn by the Budget Committee. I think Zach and Alden were pretty clear in their comments that they felt that it was money that could be well spent, but if the select board wasn't going to move forward with it, they weren't going to leave it in the budget. I will say that as an individual selectman, I talked directly with the road agent. He told me that he did not feel he needed the additional 100,000. The board talked about it. I guess, I'm not going to speak for all the members, but I think the general gist of the board's decision was we're not going to give a department head or an elected official an extra $100,000 if they've been pretty clear they don't think they need it and they don't have a plan to use it.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, hold on, John?
Yeah, I think this budget is going to be a challenge to pass regardless, and adding anything to it is going to make it even harder. If you want to make the motion at the deliberative session and let the folks there add it, then that's great if they do. But I think every penny we add to the budget at this point is increasing the chance that we'll be living with a default budget in 2018.
Phil?
I have to say that I'm torn on this one. I did second Member Verbal's motion to add the 100,000 immediately. But also in my career, I've been faced with having more money than you can actually manage to get the work done. And it's a poor reflection on the performance of the road agent if we give him more money than he can actually manage in his year's worth of activities. So I'm torn.
Mr. Chairman?
Andrew?
I just have a question. Kevin brought up the comment on impact fees, and I don't quite understand, I know that, developers give us money, and there's some time frame in which it has to be paid. Is there some deadline? Are things expiring that we're not spending that we should be appropriating?
That's an Andy answer.
Yeah, there is a deadline that you have to expend impact fees by, or you have to return it to the developers you collected it from. The bulk of the money in that 100,000, though, that we used for 3 specific road projects was actually, I don't remember the exact term, state grant that came back to the town for road improvement. It was completely unexpected. It was, in our case, it was around 123.
Was that the 126th?
100, yeah, that we received to put towards road work, yeah. And we also added some impact fee money, because that's what the purpose of collecting the impact fees is for.
Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, but again, what puzzles me is the inconsistency in messaging that I'm receiving. Because I'm told, well, gee whiz, you throw all this money at them, they can't do anything with it. They're just, they can't spend the money fast enough. In fact, most of this work can be contracted out, so it's simply putting it out to bid and getting a vendor to do it. We don't have to do it internally, certainly. And when we get, a windfall from the state of $100,000, all of a sudden we can come up with a priority list. I drive all around this town, and the roads are in great disrepair. It is the thing that I hear the second most often from my constituency is the degrading shape of the roads. And to think that the highway agent, $100,000 does not go very far in road reconstruction. And to think we can't pick out a few projects, put it out to bid, and get it contracted in 1 year, I tend to agree. If the elected highway agent cannot do that, that is grossly unfortunate. All I would say is I would encourage members to support the amendment to the bottom line.
Jack?
My only comment is I want to see the budget pass. I think including that paving money with all the other activity in the budget this year, it could possibly have an impact on that budget passing. I want to see the town's budget pass, so I think we need to leave it as we've brought it forward.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, and by voting in favor, you're voting to add the 100,000 back in. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 2, all those opposed. Amendment fails, I'm sorry. So we're back to the original motion. $4,269,211.07. Further discussion on that number.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question.
Yes.
Is the number you just quoted larger or smaller than the number we had previously voted?
That one I gotta ask John, I don't remember the number that we've, the voted that we, it was a 500 for the cemeteries, Andrea.
There was a $500 increase for the cemetery, and then the selectmen's budget versus our budget was off by $1,948. And when Zach and company discussed it last week, they came up with the $1,948 as the difference, but it was added to it as opposed to subtracted, so we were off by twice, $1,948.
Too high.
This will bring it back down. So the things that we reduced, the selectmen chose not to reduce. So our budget will be less than the selectmen budget by $1,948.
Mr. Chairman, point
Yep.
of order. The vote we're taking now is the ballot recommendation?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes.
So historically, I believe what this committee has done is moved and voted the bottom line and voted the ballot recommendation number second as a separate item.
Well, we voted the ballot recommendation number at the last one. This is a housekeeping measure because we didn't have the correct number at the last meeting.
So I just got 2 different answers. I got yes and now I've got no. So as a point of order, what are we, how
Right
can-
now, we are updating the ballot recommendation number because we had the wrong number at the last meeting.
That's all we're doing. We haven't
clerical
changed,
connection,
we haven't
correction.
changed any numbers. In the budget, we are up, when we calculated the budget at the last meeting, we got the wrong number. This is an update to the correct number. That's what we're doing here. If you want to make a motion to reopen the ballot recommendations, make the motion after. And if the will of the board wants to reopen the ballot for recommendation, we can do that. All right, further discussion on this number. Andrea?
As I mentioned, I was interested in just simply moving some dollars. In other words, it would not change the bottom line. Do I need to, where does that go? How do I have to do that?
That I'm not sure.
In order to-
Andy's got something on that, because I'm not
Yeah,
sure if we
this
can
is
add a line.
This is a technical question about adding a line for the fire and rescue retirement, and I'm going to defer to the town administrator, if you don't mind, for his answer as to whether he can simply add a line for that and move the money.
I don't know if we can add a line.
We can.
We
can.
learned a year or so ago that the budget committee can create lines in the budget. It happened with the school budget on a particular item. I can't
Okay.
remember what it was.
Supplies.
What was it on?
It was a supply line we added.
That's right.
Supply line. The budget committee opened that line and added $1 to it, I believe. But that was after the chairman at that time consulted with the,
You just can't add a line in the middle of a year.
right.
Okay.
It's already been voted.
Okay. So the question, and we're beyond my expertise on this one, if we're moving the money, we're not actually changing the bottom line. Your plan that you want is just to add a line to separate an existing line.
Correct.
So, John, you're more skilled at this than I am.
And this is basically to take, as I understand it, this is to
To
take,
split the retirement line.
yeah, to take money from where it's at now in the retirement and move it specifically to the fire department so it can be more easily seen.
So you've done this for 20-something years, Andy. Can we do that after we set the bottom line?
The only question, Mr. Dill, would be is that you need to put $1 in that line to open it. So then you increase the bottom line by $1 and you take the $1 out of one of the other.
Or you can transfer $1 from
Oh, we can
existing
transfer a
retirement.
dollar. So,
Do we have any?
now that we're all thoroughly confused, I think John's looking for an answer.
If I understand the question correctly, Andrea, you want to add a retirement line to the fire rescue budget.
Right, exactly.
Like the police department.
But I don't want to add any dollars. I simply want to move the dollars from the retirement line in the general budget so that the fire and rescue budget includes everything. I know, again, that this is an issue of concern to people in the community, and I believe you've actually set up a meeting that people are going to come to on a Sunday in another week or so.
The select board have set up a meeting.
Right, and I believe, they may be interested in seeing the total
I
dollars.
believe this is how we do it in the police budget.
It is how we do it in the police budget, but I
Yes.
guess the
We just have
question...
never included it in the fire budget previously because we've never had any
Never.
retirement. We've never
Exactly.
paid anyone in the
Right,
fire budget.
exactly.
So just my question, though, because we do have a motion on the floor for this, my question would just be procedural, for those of you who've done this for quite a few years.
No, if you're not going to change.
If we're not going to
amount.
change the number, we should just vote on the bottom line number, get the motion off the table, and go from there.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Kevin?
So the way we've always done it, the motion to the bottom line came very, very quick tonight, and now we're forced to,
Well, we've already had a motion to the bottom line. The budget...
I can finish.
Oh, sorry.
So the first motion we had tonight was to the bottom line. And so now all discussion at this point is an amendment to the bottom line, as opposed to if we would have waited, these proposals could have come up before the bottom line was on the table. We could work our way to make whatever final changes to the budget we want, and then at that point, vote the bottom line. I would say parliamentarily, probably the easiest way to go would be to remove the second and remove the motion to the bottom line, open the town budget for discussion, allow the member to make her motion, see if she gets a second, have a discussion, get it finished, and when that's all done, move to the bottom line so that they're not intermingled items.
So my concern was, and the reason that I made the motion quickly was not to to squash comment on the budget, but so that we had the updated number to work off. I believe you made the second on that, Zach.
I did, and I mean, if we move the bottom line, there's nothing stopping us from then.
I mean, my whole plan here is just to, so that we had the correct number, was my
I would rather
thought.
see us vote on the bottom line, finish that, and then if we need to open up to make any changes, especially where they're not gonna be affecting the bottom
They're not going to
line.
affect the bottom line, yeah.
Right.
Or if we do have motions, because we may have a motion to, we can reopen discussion on the,
Right, but I would like to see the bottom line move first, and then we can
Mr.
open
Chairman,
I-
point
I'm-
of order,
some lines.
point of order.
okay?
So if you move the bottom line, that essentially closes the town budget for discussion. If we then vote to open it back up and make changes, even if the dollar amount doesn't change, when we do the bottom line, that's really saying everything, pages 1 through however many pages we're up to now, as we've, at 87, as we've gone through, discussed, and approved, that's what bottom line is. So really, we should go into discussion on the budget. I think it's the only item that's gonna come up. I don't plan on making any further motions.
Do you have a line on
Yeah, I have a line
Okay.
number.
that?
So-
That was just what I was wondering. Hold on one second. Phil had a comment, and I think Kevin's right. I think we ought to squash this, open it, and go in.
I'm not going to let you. I'm going to make a motion to amend the bottom line by $1 and add a line in the budget, I don't know where, that says engineering services for Northern Pass.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
So that's a whole new thing.
We have
an open
We have an open motion.
motion.
We can make an amendment to
That's
it.
an amendment.
That's,
To
okay,
the bottom, you move the bottom line.
Yes.
I
So
just
you're-
want to amend the bottom line by $1
okay.
with the
We are
purpose.
getting parliamentarily,
So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest we remove the motion on the bottom line, allow the good member to make the motion that she noticed, and then if the other member wants to make another motion, and then we can just get through the budget, nail it, and then.
oh, I agree with you,
retract your
Kevin, on this
motion.
one.
There's
Phil,
been no
if
second
you're
for the
willing to
motion, so
retract
we'll-
it, I think that
Retracted.
this is, you know.
Get a second
yeah,
anyway.
And I'm gonna retract.
You will.
Zach?
Yes.
And I'm gonna do, Kevin's correct on this one, this is the only way to really to do this without further muddying the water. So let's just open the discussion of the town budget. I'll let Andrew go first, Phil, and then I'll get back to you on it.
Okay,
Do we need to move reopening the budget in that case?
Since we voted on it, let's just do it, just to
I'll
have
move
it.
to open the town budget back
And
for
I'll
consideration.
Second Kevin's. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Okay.
we're open back up.
on page 26, there is a line, 014196092230, and it's in the amount of $104,512. Prior to the 2 new fire positions being added, that number was 80,500, which is a difference of $24,012. I would like to remove the $24,012, bring this number back down to 80,500, which is what it was. And I would like to, over on page,
Just for quick clarification, on 26, the line number she read off was just listed as retirement under the insurance heading.
correct. And then if we go to the new fire and rescue budget, I would propose that we need to add a new line.
Give a page, Andrea.
That is 37.
Just trying to get that point.
And based on the system that appears to happen with the chart of accounts, I believe that line would have to be 01.4220.04.230, because wherever I see retirement, like police or here, .230 seems to be a retirement designation in the chart of accounts. So I would add that line, and I would make that line $24,012. Again, no difference to the overall budget bottom line, simply associating the fire department retirement with, or fire and rescue retirement with the fire and rescue budget.
Second.
That takes care of that one. So we have a move and a second. Further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, are you done?
Oh, yes, I simply want to move my $24,012.
Mr. Chairman, so the reason I seconded it is, one of the things that we've always strived for is budgeting consistency. And so fire and rescue is public safety, police is public safety. If this is how we're budgeting the police department, and there seems to be a desire to move to a paid fire and rescue program, professional as opposed to volunteer, then I would suggest that the most appropriate course of action would be to budget those departments in a similar manner, and that is why I will support the motion.
Can I just ask, John, from the administrative side, end of things, would this cover the fire retirement money that we need this year?
I can't give you that answer off the top of my head.
Andy?
Yeah, given our ability to move money as necessary, it doesn't particularly matter. If for some reason it doesn't, we will adjust accordingly.
I don't know if you're public on this one, Steve.
Mr. Chairman?
Kevin?
1 second. Mr. Chairman, point of order. The committee has always allowed testimony from department heads and selectmen when considering the town budget, as the same courtesy is extended to the school district.
Steve? Just use the mic so we know.
In the past, it's been very simple. If a member has a request such as your motion, all that really would have been needed would mention it in the meeting that you'd like to see that money put in a separate line, and we probably would have taken care of it very quickly. Rather than bring it to this last minute thing, mention that you think the X, Y, or Z should be in a certain item. And in the past, I believe Andy would agree with me, we've accommodated these requests pretty easily, rather than get to a vote.
Andy?
Yeah, just in Andrew's defense, I think we brought this to the table fairly late because of the process we used, bringing the fire wages and retirement into the budget. So people didn't really have too much of a time frame
I was just
to
talking
get
for
to
the
us.
future.
Right. May I respond?
Andrew?
I don't know if you see the stacks of papers here, but the retirement number was not updated until one of the very last iterations of this that we received, and it wasn't until we had time to think of it. So as soon as I saw it, I said, oh, that makes more sense that it would be there. And if I had known about it prior, I certainly would have brought it up prior.
Further discussion on the motion? I think it's a good idea myself. I think, like you and Kevin both said, that we do this with the police, why not with the fire? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
What's the discussion? It's so convoluted now. Was this on just the movement?
This is on just this motion.
Yes,
To move
thank you.
24,000.
I'm sorry, usually I do a recap.
Thank
So
you.
this is to move it over to the fire. So motion passes unanimously. We had another prospective motion.
I would make a motion to add $1 to the budget, the bottom line, with a new line that reads, engineering services for Northern Pass project.
Do we have a second?
I will second it, but we need a location in the budget for that.
It maybe makes sense to go into planning, because planning has engineering services for their subdivision requirements. And they have a contracted service through an engineering firm. It would just be another line.
Do you want to speak to your motion now that we have a second on it, Phil?
Mr. Berglund made a very pointed observation that we're paying all the legal services quite heavily to protect the town's in character with Northern Pass. And should Northern Pass reach approval and the bulldozers and the line trucks and the gravel trucks and everything starts coming, it would probably be appropriate to have an engineering firm look at the condition of our roads and point to, the Northern Pass activities that take place so that we can justify a request.
Okay, so currently, just to update your request, we have a line 399, which is planning board contract. You're just
Page is
saying, sorry, page 17. You're just saying add a line after that for
Yeah,
engineering
specifically for
services.
Northern Pass engineering.
Okay, in the planning and zoning.
It makes logic, unless the selectmen think there's another location that's more appropriate.
We haven't discussed this at all, so I would take your recommendation, and planning makes more sense than anything I could think of.
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin?
do we have a member of the planning board present?
No, we have conservation.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, with no indication from anybody from the planning board that they either want this in their budget or would even necessarily spend the money, even though it's a lowly dollar, I think for that reason, based on previous discussion tonight, I cannot support the motion, especially given that line 310 already exists, and it could simply be put into that line or wherever appropriate.
Line 310 being planning board engineering reviews.
That's the line we're talking about.
I just want to say that, so
Sure.
people who aren't
So,
following along.
so to
with the
me,
budget.
there's already a line that could go into. It already contains some funds that could be increased. And based on the highway discussion, and nobody here from planning, I can't support the motion.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll give it an aye. So we have 5 opposed. We have 5.
Motion fails.
Motion fails because it's tied.
Did somebody not? Oh, no. Okay.
No, we had 5 and 5. We are getting all sorts of interesting parliamentary movement today.
Mr. Chairman?
Much more than usual. Andy?
This isn't an actionable thing, but just, I would note that the Board of Selectmen modified the default budget number. We knocked it down by a little over $36,000. The new default number that we'll be submitting is $3,947,590.18.
Andy, can you say that one more time?
Yep, $3,947,590.18.
Thank you.
Okay. That was skipping ahead a little bit, but further discussion on the town budget. Seeing none. Andy?
Quick question.
Yep.
We don't have it on the agenda, but the budget, I do have estimated revenues. The Budget Committee should take a vote on the estimated revenue amount.
Okay.
And if you're still willing to contemplate that under town budget, I would make said motion at this time.
Okay, I'll second it.
Well, I'd make a motion that we approve 2018 estimated revenues in the anticipated amount of $1,684,852.
I'll second. I know Andrew's got some questions on this.
Well, yes, Mr. Chairman. One thing that was a little distressing is the fact that this new number came out today at 4:22 PM. And I had spent 2 hours today, I'm retired, so I can do these things. I'm a professional accountant. I know numbers. And so I asked the question of Mr. Harrington, why can't we see the 2017 budget numbers along the line? There's a column there for it, but there's nothing there. And he said it was because it wasn't in last year's, software or whatever, so it can't be presented. And so I went back to last year's budget, and last year's budget for revenue was 1.3 something million. Previous actual was 1.68 million. Budget was 1.3, and as you can see, the 2017 actual came in at $1,936,597 approximately, which means that the budgeted revenue last year was off by a factor of 46%. I know there's been lots of news recently about places where governing bodies haven't budgeted properly. And I do see that this year's revenue budget, I think, in looking at the amounts, it does seem reasonable. There was the 126,000 was an odd thing from last year. We don't anticipate it again this year. But I'm just concerned that being off by over 600,000, that happens to be about $1 per thousand in your tax rate. That's a huge thing, and I'm very disappointed that last year, I don't know what the discussion was in this committee about revenues, but I have no idea why it went from almost 1.7 million and then it was accepted at 1.3 as a budget figure. That just gives $600,000 of extra money to the government. And so, again, I think that this year's budget seems reasonable based on what last year's actual was, but I did want to express my concern about the fact that we had such a drastic change in our revenues budget versus actual last year.
Mr. Chairman?
I was wondering if the selectmen or the,
I don't have a response.
okay. Kevin?
So I have to admit, I'm a little delinquent because I requested the information from the town administrator. The town administrator kindly supplied the information requested, and I failed to bring it with me tonight. So I don't have the breakdown of what the money largely spent on roads, what the breakdown was versus the, for lack of a better term, the windfall from the state versus the share that comes from impact fees. Does somebody remember that, or at least a thumb to the wind number? That's fine. But the one thing I'll say is perhaps the impact fees are a one-time thing. I'm not really sure what's sitting in the account this year. Nobody was aware last year that we would be throwing 100,000 at it. But it's, to the best of my knowledge, the legislation that was passed in the State House was that there's 2 installments of road and highway funding, of which we've received the first, and I believe there's a second installment coming this year, if I remember that correctly. And perhaps I'm in error, but I don't believe that I am.
I haven't gotten any information on a second installment.
Okay. So going off, well, unless somebody else wants to address it, going off memory, I believe the tale that's always been told is that it is better to underestimate revenue and over-collect, for obvious reasons, than the opposite. If you overestimate revenues and you spend money that you think you're going to get that you don't get, then you're in a world of hurt. And so it's my understanding that we typically try to estimate revenues on a very conservative side so that we don't find ourselves in that predicament. I have to admit, 40% sounds, somewhat shocking. I was a little dismayed as well. So I saw the revenue projections when I got home tonight, and like other members, was trying to comb through it and make heads or tails of it. And then upon, a double check of the email, there was an updated form, which I did not have a chance to dig into. I will say, if we're going to take a vote on this tonight, I'm going to vote no, simply because I haven't had a chance to consider it, let alone try to understand it.
What I was going to ask was if Andy or John wanted to give us an overview of the revenue, how they came. John, could you give us an overview of the revenue, how you guys came up with it, et cetera, and so forth?
To the best of my ability, I will. This was done by our contract finance person.
Okay.
I did not prepare this. She was obviously looking at the 2017 actuals, trying to justify coming up with a conservative 2018 revenue estimate. And I believe after the discussions that I've had with her, it's a fair estimate of what we can expect this year. As Andrea pointed out earlier, it does not include the additional block grants of $126,000. She did make some adjustments that were not calculated last year, and I think it's a much fairer assessment going forward this year than we had last year.
Andy?
Yeah, to Kevin's point, the long and short of it is we've very definitely undergone on our estimated revenues, and you can, if you look back beyond the 2 years that you might have here, you'll see a long and consistent history of that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Troy, you didn't get me that time. What we're voting on here, we had a motion and a second on the approval of the estimated revenues for 2018, so we're going to vote to approve the estimated revenues. I'm sorry, Zach. Troy would have grabbed me anyway. That was a long discussion between motion and voting. So if we have no further discussion, all those in favor of the estimated revenues signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have one opposed. Motion passes. All right. Any further discussion of the budget?
Mr. Chairman.
Kevin?
So, I'm not parliamentary, I'm not really sure when the best time to ask it is, so I will ask now. I would ask the indulgement of the Budget Committee that we, after we move the bottom line, the updated bottom line on the town budget, that we go through the warrant articles one more time. When we did our budget recommendations, we had 8 members present. We now have 10. That's 25% more people. It's a more accurate representation of the will of the committee. It only takes a few minutes to vote on budget recommendations, and so I would ask that the committee concur that we go through that tonight.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to approve $4,269,211.07.
Second.
Further discussion? Andrew?
I'd like to just make the same comments I made last time. We had some glitch, so we had a recess, and the video, there was like an 18-minute gap, a little Watergate action. So my comments didn't get on the video, they did get in the minutes, but I'm going to vote against the overall budget, and I have 2 main reasons. The first one is that when discussing the new fire and rescue, the fire chief directly said, we need to have 2 people, to cover and have adequate coverage. In the budget that we're currently proposing, there are 2 part-time people for the entire year and 2 full-time people for the entire year. I did question that, and I suggested, well, couldn't we say, the discussion was that we can hire the part-time people right away, but it might take a while to get the full-time people. And so my question would be, well, why don't we prorate? And I was told, well, there might need to be some overlap. Well, not like, why don't we budget 4 months of one and 9 months of the other? Why are we doing 12 months of 2 people and 12 months of another 2 people? So for that reason, I feel that this budget is overstated. We do not need 4 people, according to the fire chief, the incoming fire chief. He said we need 2. And to have 4 in here is an overstatement. The second reason I'm voting against the budget is in Parks and Recreation, we have a full-time director at $50,000, and we have half of his assistant directorship. They operate a revolving fund. When I look at the disbursements out of the revolving fund, the main thing that they do is they run an after-school program. When asked about the salary of the director being at $50,000, it was justified by the fact that he has employees to supervise and 100 children to be responsible for. Well, if that's what he's primarily doing, why isn't his salary and more of the assistant director's salary included in and covered by fees in the revolving fund? Why are we paying for 1.5 people? I did notice that in last year's expenditures on a line called senior services, there was $240. We have an elderly population in this town, and I think that, perhaps there should be more of his time devoted to that. But in the meantime, 1.5 people in Parks and Rec is another problem that I have, so I am going to vote no on the overall budget.
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin?
I couldn't disagree with the member's previous remarks. I agree with everything that she said. I, too, cannot vote in favor of this budget for two reasons, and they're interlinked. One is, and I haven't done the math with the updated number, but I don't think we need to. On page 87 right now, it says 8.6% year-on-year increase. And the amount that we changed it by tonight is nominal, and so that percentage will change nominally. We had a 5% increase in taxes this year, and we're proposing an 8.7% increase in the budget this year, and I cannot support it. And the largest driving cost in this budget is something that the town gets to decide by either accepting the entire budget or rejecting the entire budget. And that's whether or not we go from a volunteer fire department to at least a partially professional paid fire department. That question, in my humble opinion, should be set aside as a warrant article to divine the will of the people in this town. It's my opinion that the town has always been very generous in supporting fire, rescue, and police. And so for those that advocate for it, I think at deliberative and I think at the polls, I think that these things do get passed. And to say, well, we're afraid they won't, so we're going to bury it in the budget and we're going to result in an over 8% year-on-year increase after a 5% increase, that is too much to bear for too many families. 1 out of 5 kids in the Deerfield Community School is on free or reduced lunch. There is economic hardship in this town. As the previous speaker mentioned, we've got a significant senior population on fixed incomes, and this is a real burden for those families. And for that reason, I can't support this budget.
Further discussion, and I will note that we did have this debate at the last meeting, and we voted on this at the last meeting. So further discussion on this. Seeing none, all those in favor for the budget signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have 3 opposed. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we reconsider our budget recommendation numbers for all dollar warrant articles for the municipal budget, because now there's 10 of us instead of 8.
I'll second that.
So the reason is quite obvious. We have 25% more members. It only takes a few moments, and it's more representative of the will of the body if we take a few minutes and go through them quickly.
Further discussion? Andrew?
Mr. Chair, did we actually get a new copy of the warrant articles
I
tonight?
didn't
Because
see one.
You did not.
There was one we did not vote on, wasn't there?
There was one we did not vote on. There was a wording issue. John and I spoke about that on Wednesday. I don't believe the selectmen had a meeting since then because Monday was a holiday.
I think we were advised, I'll defer to John, but I believe we were advised by our legal counsel to leave it as was. That's correct.
Okay. There was, for those of you who missed that one, there was we all thought it was worded kind of oddly, but if that's what you want to put through, then we're going to have to vote on that one.
Was that 7?
Yeah,
That was number
the
one.
town hall, no, not number one. Number
Oh,
one's
not
ours.
number 1, the first one of
Yes.
the,
Number 2. John and I went through that.
It's the elevator in town hall.
Yeah, but before we get into that, we do have a motion and a second on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, just one last thing. There is no benefit to anybody by not reconsidering these articles quickly tonight and getting a 10-member vote versus 8. There certainly is a downside to not reconsidering them, and that is having 2 members that couldn't be here that are here tonight participate.
I would just say this is something that usually the Budget Committee says if you're going to vote on it, to be at the meeting where it's voted on.
It wasn't noticed that that was going to be part of that meeting. And we had 2 meetings that we missed because of various posting issues. It's,
Mr. Chairman?
Andy?
Yeah, I'd like to move the question.
All those in favor, say aye.
I'll move the
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, I've moved,
Moving the question.
thank you, yes. All those in favor of moving the question, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. To update the motion on the floor, we have a motion on the floor to reopen warrant article discussion for those that were not tabled. Andrea?
I
But
would like to just,
We've moved the question. We can't discuss.
oh, well,
So,
number 7 in the minutes isn't what we voted on.
we moved the question. We
Okay.
have to vote on it. So the motion is to reopen discussion on all of the
Just vote
warrant
totals.
articles.
The motion was just to update the vote totals, not discussion.
Okay, to update the vote totals. That's different than what we had discussed. All those in favor, say aye.
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 So that's, I'm sorry again,
5?
5.
I'm not sure we can, if we bring forward if we open up a warrant article for a vote, you can't have a vote without discussion. So if we're opening
It's
up.
just a vote to recommend or not recommend.
Right,
the
we
article.
can't not have discussion.
All right.
You can't,
So we have
It's not my-
5.
It's not my
That we-
intention to start
that-
discussion.
but I
all
mean, but
those-
the point is, we just make sure that's clear,
John.
we can't not have discussion.
We are in the middle of a vote. We can't discuss in the middle of the vote. All those opposed?
Then I'm not gonna oppose.
All right, we have 4. All right, so the motion passes. We're going to reopen. I have to find mine. Hold on one second.
Somebody didn't vote, it's 5.
Who didn't vote? We have 10 people here. I had 5 for and 4 against.
Well, maybe we have ever vote again.
What's that?
No, the motion passed.
The motion passed.
Can we get copies real quick of the articles?
But who didn't? You need to have the numbers.
Yeah, because if it's a tie, then then it fails.
If it ties, it fails, but it passed. I had 5 for and 4 against when I counted,
So that means somebody didn't vote.
Somebody didn't vote.
which means one person abstained. I don't know who abstained. I voted for it.
We need to revote that again. You need to note abstentions and.
All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. We have
5.
5. Opposed?
5.
We have 5.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Somebody didn't vote last time. Thank you for voting a second time. I'm trying to go through my pile. We do have to vote on the one that we tabled if we don't have an update
Which
on
I can
that.
make a motion and read that.
Could
if
you
like.
make a motion and read that?
I would make a motion that we take a vote on warrant Article 2 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $300,000 to provide handicap access to the second floor of the town hall in the form of an elevator to be housed in an addition located at the back of the town hall. Construction of the elevator will result in the removal of existing access ramp. The Heritage Commission will be putting $10,000 towards the cost of the project. The Heritage Commission will actively seek grant opportunities to offset the cost of the project. This is a non-lapsing article and will not lapse until December 31st, 2022.
Second.
All right, so this is the one we tabled last week. And the reason that we voted to table was because it was the raise to appropriate 300 when we said that it was up to and that we were going to have funding from other, I guess the question was, you were looking for 300 in this article, correct? And the first explanation kind of sounded like we weren't.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the intent of the selectmen, is to raise 300,000 from taxation in this article.
I believe this is what legal counsel has told us we have to use for wording
All right.
in this warrant article.
Discussion of the warrant article. Seeing none. There's no discussion on this.
Parliamentary inquiry?
Yes.
Is this the ballot recommendation?
This is the ballot recommendation that
Thank
we're
you.
voting on right now. So we're voting on the ballot recommendation of this. No further discussion?
Mr. Chairman? The only thing I'll note is this question has been on the ballot repeatedly and soundly rejected by the voters of Deerfield.
All those in favor of recommending, signify by saying aye. Aye. Hold them up, just because we're not unanimous on this one. We got 4, 7, 4, 8, sorry, Zach, didn't see your hand. Opposed? 2. Thank you. Thank you for voting. All right,
Mr. Chairman,
Andrea.
I do have a question about the wording of Article 7, because the one we voted on is not what was reported in the minutes, and I don't know what the official article says, and it has a difference between from taxation versus not, and so if we voted on something that isn't the final article, we haven't voted on what's going.
Andy, what I have here for Article 7 is to from tax,
Right. The warrant article that we voted on, as presented by the Board of Selectmen, was correct. There was clearly a mistake in the minutes.
The minutes are the problem.
I think
Okay.
it was a mistake between 6 and 7,
Okay.
just holding over. So that concludes the town portion for now.
Mr. Chairman?
Andrew?
I'd like to just point out that in the annual report that the town does, it's a nice big thick book, one of the things they have in there are the trust fund balances, and they include a report on the school trust fund balances. And what I've noticed is the trust fund balances for the school report differ from what the town is carrying for those amounts, and they differ in a couple of ways. 2 of the amounts 2 years ago all got into facility repair, according to the town. On the school budget, they went into paving and technology. The town did not show a $10,000 disbursement out of technology that the school showed. So I believe the school probably has the more accurate figures regarding the trust funds having to do with the school, but I'm concerned that there seems to be this difference. And I have to say, I'm a little concerned about the audit company. I have no knowledge of who the auditors are, but last year we had the problem with the FICA, and they didn't catch it. And for trust fund balances to differ, it seems to me that I would just encourage the town administration to make sure that somebody investigates this. Again, I spent an hour or so trying to figure it out, and all I can do is see that here's where the differences are. So just bringing that to your attention. I do have one other issue having to do with the town, or a couple other issues. One is we've hired the part-time fire people, and I see in the budget we're doing them at 30 hours. 30 hours is like a trigger mechanism for the Affordable Care Act.
I think we're going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had this argument with a number of people, and 30 hours is indeed a trigger for the Affordable Care Act. However, there is also a second part to that trigger, and that's a requirement that you have 50 full-time or full-time equivalent employees, which we don't come close to.
I was trying to discover that under New Hampshire law because I'm not sure, there are things called control groups, and I'm not sure that because we in fact pay the school employees through our tax base, that we wouldn't be considered some sort of controlled group with them. I know what a controlled group is in a corporate situation. I don't know what a controlled group is in a town. In fact, in the literature I was reading, they were talking about the fact that you should check with your legal advisors. So I think we belong to something called the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I would hope that the legal people there would know whether we are considered.
I think these are better brought up at a selectmen's meeting
Okay.
than just overall
Okay.
at the budget committee.
Yeah, I would just quickly mention that legal counsel was involved in this, as was a discussion with our healthcare provider and our benefits provider.
Okay, thank you.
We had the same concerns initially.
So any other town stuff? I think we're going to move to the school. We have voted a bottom line on the school. We have voted on the warrant articles for the school at our last meeting. Zach, you handed out some stuff. You want to give us an update?
Yeah, so just a quick thing, in reviewing the default budget, there is a change to the default budget. I did some math real quick. It results in a reduction of $66,502, making the new default budget $13,345,847.
That $347, Zach?
$13,345,847.
Yeah, there's a direct handout on that.
I'm just missing one.
You have a handout, the thinner of the two handouts that I gave you, have the default number on it. Other than that, there's no other changes.
Okay, and like I said, we did vote the bottom line on the school budget, and it was $1,000 higher than what the school board had brought to us,
Correct.
Right.
because we added $1,000 to the art line.
Mr. Chairman,
Gavin?
I'd like to move that we open for brief discussion the school district budget.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
So we had our work meeting and a Tuesday meeting canceled. Unfortunately, the reschedule, I was not available. I have two quick questions, and that's it. I'd ask the indulgence of the committee.
What are your questions on? Okay. All those in favor of reopening the school budget, signify by saying aye, or raising your hand. All right, opposed? 3, we're going to reopen the school budget.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question for the superintendent, if she'll indulge me. If you could come to the mic.
Or if we can bring one to you.
Perfect. So the reason I'm asking the superintendent or whatever subordinate she may choose to delegate it to, they are largely the producers of the Deerfield School District budget. It was reviewed by the school board, but really it's the administrative staff, both at the SAU level and the school level, that have the intimate knowledge of the budget. That's what we're always told. So just a quick question. Are we underfunding the Deerfield School District? And if so, where and by how much?
I'm not sure I can give you a good answer to that question. I'm not sure that we're underfunding it. We certainly went back and level funded a lot of lines that people had asked for increases in. I can have the principal speak more to the specific lines if you have questions.
Follow-up, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman?
So a follow-up, are there any items that are not in this budget that would be supported by either the SAU staff or the administrative staff at the school that they would like to have a motion made and considered by this committee before we close this budget this year?
I have nothing for the SAU administration. I can pass the mic to the principal if you'd like.
Whoever wants to answer it.
No, not at this time.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we reduce, and this is on page 27, line 246. And so that's 001.2310.810.108.000.
27.
And that's the New Hampshire School Board Association dues, and I would like to reduce that line by $3,985 to zero it out.
All right, I just want to clarify for everybody, we're on page 27 of the old budget. and
The one
that's-
we got tonight. The new one we got tonight from the
Yeah, it's the same line.
It's the
number,
same
though.
line number. It's line number
246.
Do we have a second to the motion? Okay, I don't hear a second to the motion, so the motion fails.
There's no motion.
Or there is no motion. Further discussion of the school budget. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to close discussion of the school budget.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, school budget's closed. Which brings us to old business. Do we have any old business? Seeing none, do we have any new business?
Mr. Chairman?
Kevin?
We should discuss about scheduling a meeting after the deliberative sessions to reconsider recommendations on any and all articles that are changed at deliberative session.
I agree with you, which is why we had discussion of next meeting date as our new business. Deliberative session is,
Town is the 3rd, and school is the 10th February.
thank you, John.
You?
13th work for everybody, which is the Tuesday after.
Tuesday. What's the voting day?
March
March
13th.
13th or something?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was in the wrong month, my apologies.
February.
March 13th is when we vote.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move February 20th, if that's possible.
That would actually be better for me as well.
anybody else? Anyone else? 13th versus 20th? I'm fine with either. All right.
That is President's Week. I mean, it doesn't affect me, but.
Oh,
I-
that, yeah.
I don't know if that might
We got a
affect.
whole week now?
It's the week before,
It's the week before-
vacation.
February vacation's the last week in March.
Oh.
Kevin?
Just a point of information, delaying the vote, the potential ABC changing in the vote will potentially cause the problem with balloting.
Mr. Chairman,
So I would move for the 13th then.
Mr. Chairman, could we just do the session, could we just have the meeting immediately following deliberative session? And consider each just immediately, as soon as they adjourn deliberative, just, it only takes a minute. There's only a couple warrants that, a couple articles that ever get changed.
I'd rather not do that on the 10th. How far out do you need to print the ballots?
I don't have to print any.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're retired, I forgot about that. Just right away.
If it were you.
If it were you.
As soon as, very shortly after
Yeah.
the deliberative sessions, we need to get the information to the purchase.
So the 13th, can we have a quorum the 13th?
I can't be here, I just have to miss another meeting. That's not a big deal.
Okay, 6:30 on the 13th.
Mr. Chairman?
Kevin?
I will not be able to attend that meeting. I'll be out of town on important business.
I'm sorry.
Not me.
We didn't have it in here, but any further public comment? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? You just assume that one will pass, everybody.
Is it ever not?